What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. The Arkansas Sports Cluster is about a month away. We're going to talk about some of the things to expect with that. For those of you who don't know what the Sports Cluster means, it's when the recruiting dead period's lifted. It's when baseball starts up, March Madness for basketball, and spring football as well. All of those things overlapping at the same time. About a month away from that. We're going to discuss all that and more on today's episode of Hawg Sports Live. Before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. If you haven't followed the page yet on Facebook, be sure to do so. All of the stuff, all of our free content, all goes to that Facebook page. Also available on YouTube. Throw us a thumbs up or a like on both of those platforms and subscribe if you haven't done so already on our YouTube page. Also available on Apple Podcasts. Certainly appreciate any 5-star reviews out there. And let other people know what to expect with the show. Also available on Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. And Hawg Sports is just $1 right now for your first month at HawgSports.com. Start with baseball. D1 baseball has Arkansas number 8. Dave Van Horn actually probably just wrapping up a Swatters Club today. Andrew Ellis is there if you want to read all of his content on Razorback baseball. Also talks about some of the spring scrimmage and all those things that is it spring? Technically winter scrimmage, winter baseball. All those things that are going on right now with Razorback baseball. You can read all of Andrew Ellis's content at Hawg Sports. Some of it's free. Some of the more in-depth stuff is VIP, so you do need a VIP membership for the best stuff on Hawg Sports. So Arkansas ranked number 8 by D1 Baseball right now. I think they were 11th by Baseball America. They opened the season February 17th against number 19 Texas in Arlington, college baseball showdown. And then the next day it's TCU and then Oklahoma State that Sunday. So that's number 19 Texas, 18 TCU, 9 Oklahoma State. If you want to know how to watch, you probably guessed. Flow Sports. You'll need to get Flow Sports. I know everybody's excited about that. Arkansas basketball, 65-63 winners over South Carolina. First road win of the season, first true road win of the season for Arkansas basketball. It's crazy to even you would not have thought that entering this season with the way everything's going, but nice game for Devo Davis. Continues to kind of be the face of this program. Anthony Black also had a good game. You would like to see him finish a little bit better down the stretch. Just looking at where Arkansas basketball is right now, 5-5. They've won 4 straight in the SEC. 5-5 overall, 16-7 overall. 5-5 in the league, 16-7 overall. That puts Arkansas basically in the middle of the pack. Now, if you kind of look at where Arkansas was last year, or if you look at like what Arkansas needs to do to get to the NCAA tournament, Curtis has a great breakdown on all that. Curtis Wilkerson, for those of you who don't follow Curtis Wilkerson on Hawg Sports. But if you look at the basketball team last year, obviously they were like, so just to kind of paint this. So he's got a nice breakdown just like where Arkansas was last year versus this year. Joe Lunardi a year ago at this time had Arkansas as an 8 seed playing Murray State. Today he's got him 11 seed playing Miami. Jerry Palm had him an 8 seed playing Colorado State, 11 seed this year playing Penn State. So he's got several other analysts, bracketologists and stuff that, kind of comparing last year to this year. I'll say this, if you look at last year SEC basketball standings, if Arkansas takes care of business the rest of the way, I believe that would put them at home. If they take care of business at home the rest of the way, I think that would put them at 9-9 overall. If you look at last year, there were several teams that went 9-9. Alabama, South Carolina, Florida, LSU, and Texas A&M all went 9-9 last year. That wasn't enough for Texas A&M, Florida, or South Carolina. Alabama and LSU made the NCAA tournament. So you're kind of in iffy territory. However, if you look at a lot of the stuff out there, Ken Palm, all that stuff, net ranking, they have Arkansas pretty firm in there. But obviously this is a huge stretch coming up. They've got Kentucky next, Tuesday, 8 o'clock. in Lexington at Rupp Arena. Kentucky has won 6 straight SEC games, so they're on a bit of a roll. They lost to Kansas in between there in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. But that's going to be a really tough matchup on the road. They win Kentucky, they beat Kentucky, and they take care of business at home. I say they're in there for sure. Doug Gottlieb had an interesting tweet. He since deleted this. Doug Gottlieb. So this is what he said. People ask what happened to Gonzaga. They had Anthony Black. Put him on this team somewhere near the Jalen Suggs type prospect, and they are elite. Arkansas came in with a bigger bag. It isn't illegal. It is the current climate. That's a really interesting take for a Sunday morning from Doug Gottlieb. Wouldn't it also stand to reason that Gonzaga also brought a bag? He wanted to go to Spokane, Washington. He wanted to go to Gonzaga, but Arkansas just paid too much. Just a ridiculous take from Doug Gottlieb. No wonder he deleted this tweet. You wake up Sunday morning and you put that out there? Really interesting. Where was he when he was talking about all the blue blood programs that were just buying players before all this NIL stuff? Really weird take. Gonzaga, by the way, is 19-5, 8-2 in conference, in their cakewalk of a conference. They lost to Tennessee, lost to Texas, beat Kentucky, lost to Purdue, beat Michigan State, lost to Baylor. What does that put them 2-4 outside of their conference? I beat Washington, 3-4. Beat Alabama, 4-4. So about 500 playing good programs outside of their conference, which they're 8-2 in. Anyway, that just struck me as a really weird comment to make. Looking at the rest of the schedule for Arkansas basketball, Kentucky, obviously, Tuesday, this is February 7th. Today's Monday, for those watching later maybe, on ESPN. Mississippi State, Bud Walton Arena, 5 o'clock on Saturday. That's a nice time. That game's on ESPNU. At Texas A&M, that'll be a tough one. ESPN2, 8 o'clock on Wednesday, February 15th. Saturday, February 18th, Florida and Bud Walton Arena, ESPN or ESPN2. Tuesday, February 24th, Georgia. Saturday, February 25th, at Alabama. Tuesday, February 28th, at Tennessee. That's a tough stretch of games right there. And then wrapping the whole thing up with Kentucky and Bud Walton Arena. There are opportunities to prove your worth, Arkansas. There are some really tough games here mixed up. At Kentucky, you should take care of business at home. I'm not saying it's easy, but you should take care of business at home. But at Kentucky, at Texas A&M, at Alabama, at Tennessee, and then Kentucky at home, those are the ones that really jump out. I thought this was a cool distinction for Rocket Sanders. So 24/7 Sports came out with their top 25 returning running backs. I assume they'll do this at every position group, so we'll see where KJ Jefferson is. But Rocket Sanders, number 3 returning running back in the country. Here's what it said about him. And I'll name the other ones. Quinshon Judkins at Ole Miss, number 2. I think that's fair. He led the SEC in rushing, 1,567 yards, 16 touchdowns, top 10 marks in the country in both categories. Blake Corum at Michigan is number 1, the favorite to win the Doak Walker Award. So Rocket Sanders, Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson struggled to stay healthy last season, allowing opposing defenses to turn their attention to slowing down Raheem Sanders. He responded by rushing for over 100 yards in all but 5 regular games. On the year, he took 222 carries for 1,443 yards and 10 touchdowns. His most impressive performance was against Missouri, where he rushed for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns on 24 carries. He went over 170 yards 3 times throughout a simply dominant campaign. Jefferson returns to the offense in 2023, which should allow Sanders to have an even better season if the two are able to stay healthy. they've got to figure some things out on the offensive line. I think they have the answers there. It's just a matter of getting it figured out. That's going to be a real big focus in the spring for us, seeing who fits where. Bo Lemmer moving inside to center, but they've got to replace Ricky Stromberg or Bo Lemmer moving from guard to center, however you want to look at that. They've got to replace Dalton Wagner at right tackle, Luke Jones at left tackle. So basically they've got 2 returning starters back on the offensive line. You also have Takias Crawford, who played quite a bit last year, not a young guy anymore. Is Andrew Chamblee, does he take over that left tackle spot? Devon Manuel, is he a guy there? It's a lot of Joshua Braun coming in from Florida. Where does he fit in? A lot of interesting things could happen on the offensive line. Brady Latham, is he maybe the left tackle? He certainly played every position, but that's going to be a big part of this. 1,443 yards and 10 touchdowns. Rocket Sanders did not have as good a finish as you would have liked to have seen. He obviously was hurt in the bowl game, the last regular season game. Was it the last regular season game? One of the games, I felt like they had an opportunity to really get him the ball, and it just didn't work out. Is this right against Missouri? 232 yards and 3 touchdowns and 24 carries. Is that an accurate? I don't remember that being. This may be a. All right, we got to look at Rocket Sanders stats. We're going to look at game-by-game Rocket Sanders stats, because that doesn't sound 100% right to me. It's not right. They mistook Ole Miss. They messed up. And so there's a typo in there. Against Ole Miss, he ran 24 times for 232 yards and 3 touchdowns. I didn't think that sounded right, because I felt like in Missouri there was an opportunity for him to, take over the rushing title, and he only had 10 carries for 47 yards. I need to point that out to somebody. Got that wrong. 10 carries for 47 yards against Missouri. The big game was against Ole Miss. And then in the bowl game, he only had 3 carries for 17 yards because he got hurt. He got rolled up kind of from behind. So there was an opportunity for Rocket, had he stayed healthy against Kansas, had he gotten the number of carries that he should have gotten against Missouri. That's way too few carries. There was an opportunity for him to surpass Quinshon Judkins and also surpass Alex Collins to be the highest-ranking running back in Arkansas history, not named Darren McFadden. I think Alex Collins had 1,500 something. I can't remember exactly what Alex had, but I thought that didn't sound right. I'm going to have to email somebody. So what's next for Arkansas football? A lot. There's a lot going on. So spring football, the red-white game, for those of you who haven't heard yet, it hasn't been publicly put out by the university, is going to be April 15th. Okay? The football spring starts on March 9th. Okay, they have 15 practices they're allowed, and the way it's setting up, they haven't outlined this specifically yet, but the way it sets up, the red-white game will be the 14th practice, and then they'll hold one after that. They did not do a red-white game last year because of the Garth Brooks concert, if you remember. Arkansas Derby's on April 1st. Not going to interfere with that. So the way it'll start out, they'll have 5 practices before the break. I think that's a Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. I think that's the schedule. I'm almost positive that's the schedule before spring break, which is March 20th. Technically, that's the Monday. So from there, usually you go Tuesday, Thursday, Saturdays. So that would be March 28th, 30th, April 1st, 4th, 6th, 8th, 11th, 13th, and 15th. So that's 14 total practices. Recruiting in February is a complete dead period. So starting April 1st, March you'll be able to do stuff, but on April 1st, you'll be able to start welcoming in official visitors, and that runs through June 27th. June 27th is not always the date. It's just the last Wednesday in June. So when April 1st gets here, you're going to start seeing a lot of prospects come in for the 24 class. The evaluation period opens April 17th when coaches can go out on the road. You get 168 days, recruiting days, during a 42-day calendar window. So if 7 coaches are out on the road, then that counts as 7 days, all in one calendar day. Not hard to figure out, I guess. It's just a little kind of confusing language. They should change that from recruiting from days to like recruiting opportunities or something. I don't know how they would change that. But 42-day calendar window from the day you start, not including spring break, to well, that wouldn't include spring break anyway. Never mind. But 168 recruiting days on a 42-day calendar window. Where spring break would apply, I think you have like 34 days from the start of spring football to wrap it up. And so I think spring break is taken out of that because according to this would go over that. Transfer portal window opens on May 1st and wraps up on May 15th. That's going to be a wild 15 days. I mean, if it was like, I would imagine it's going to feel just as wild as the last one. The last one was 45 days long. Now, we're still going to see transfer portal stuff. There's guys that are in the transfer portal right now that don't have a home. So we'll still see transfer portal commitments and things like that. We'll even see guys that say, hey, I'm entering the transfer portal, even though they can't officially enter it until May 1st. But Arkansas has 76 players on scholarship heading into next season, if nothing else changes. 76 players on scholarship. I think we talked about Cade Fortin. Cade Fortin will count against 2020. He'll count against 2022 class retroactively for this semester, and then next semester in the fall, he'll count against the 2023 class. So that puts Arkansas at 76 total players. We've kind of outlined where Arkansas needs to go, what they need to recruit to fill up the rest of the roster. That doesn't mean they're going to go sign 9 more transfers. I mean, it could mean they'll probably lose some guys. There's probably going to be some guys that maybe don't like their situation from the new transfers who have come in. You know, you've got 22 new players coming in that are participating this spring. 10 of them are transfers. There'll be some guys that be like, I'm suddenly third team. I thought I'd be second team or maybe competing for first team who will enter the transfer portal. So we say 9 right now. It'll probably be more than 9 when it's all said and done. You know, Arkansas has had, I think, 26 total players who entered the transfer portal. Some things to look forward to. I do want to flip over to questions. This is kind of going to be a question-driven show today, so we're going to rely on you guys to get a few questions in. Paul Mitchell says, what the hell, and is requesting that we start over. And then everybody else says it's all good. We always get one guy, it feels like, every week who says there's no sound or something's messed up or there's no video. There's always, if it's not on this, it's always somebody in the comments. It's like, like on when I post it on YouTube or something. Thank you, Jonathan Parker. All good on your end. Hunter Hall says, will Arkansas pull a better quarterback than Walker White? How about Jake Merklinger or Air Nolan? Those are some guys I'm specifically familiar more with Air Nolan. There's still a long time until signing day. I mean, you got 8 months to maybe convince Walker White to come to Arkansas. I was surprised that he picked Auburn. I thought he would probably pick Clemson. And Arkansas wasn't even in the Final 3. And I think a lot of that is just because of how things were prioritized under Kendall Briles and that system not really being a great fit for Walker White. For those who don't know, I think it was February 3rd he committed to Auburn from Little Rock Christian. And really, you know, a family with a strong legacy for Arkansas. His grandfather, John Reese, played at Arkansas. I think he was on the 69 team. His brother, John Aaron, or not his brother, excuse me, his uncle, John Aaron, his brother, John David White, played at Arkansas. He was a walk-on wide receiver before he transferred to UCA. So there was a lot of Arkansas connections there. But I can understand, you know, they're prioritizing Michael Hawkins with Kendall Briles, and I feel like Hawkins was ready to commit to Arkansas. Then they had to change with Dan Enos, reprioritize Walker White, and ultimately I think probably just a little bit too late. We'll see if they can gain some ground there, but obviously quarterback's going to be an important position next year. They're going to need to bring in 2 quarterbacks if they're going to fit the numbers properly with scholarships and stuff. So because they'll lose Cade Fortin out of eligibility, KJ Jefferson most likely this is his last year, so they need to bring in a high school guy and a guy probably from the transfer portal. It's hard to get 2 high school guys that are of real good quality. So Danny West has some breakdowns. He's broken down every position group for 2024 basically, at least on offense I think, with a big red board for quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. I think maybe wide receivers is the last one he did. Cody James says AB was getting recruited by our receivers coach. Yep. Forgot his name, Kenny Guyton, and he tipped Muss off about him. That's how we found Anthony. And the bag. Matthew Turner says, I know we keep asking, but any news on Nick Smith Jr.? No, nothing new on Nick Smith Jr. If he's going to play for Arkansas in the NCAA tournament, he needs to probably, that probably needs to start happening pretty soon. I didn't mean to he needs to probably start doing this. Obviously, he's got the knee issue. So that needs to resolve itself fairly soon, right? I mean, he can't just jump into March Madness and be a guy that's going to lead Arkansas. So hopefully it happens. We did a poll on HawgSports. It's very 50-50 on whether people think he'll come back or not. There was some talk last month that he'd be back in February. We've seen him on the sidelines for home games. I mean, I think we all, first of all need to hope that Nick's gets fully healthy because he's got a big future ahead of him. And at the same time, we all want to see him play for the Hogs, right? I mean, think about what Nick Smith did, his journey at Arkansas. Guy could have gone anywhere in the country in high school to play at a prep school or something, but decided to stay at home and play at North Little Rock, home state school. And had his eligibility question, had to go through all kinds of hearings and all kinds of stuff just to be eligible. I mean, it was really ridiculous. You got the number 1 ranked player in the country out of high school who wants to stay home and play for Arkansas, and we're like, you can't. So had that whole journey, and then ends up at Arkansas, calling the Hogs, and has just it's been an unfortunate year for basketball. I've been impressed with how they've slowly started to figure things out, figure the pieces out here and there. The emergence of Devo Davis has been really impressive. The guy's 40% from three-point range in SEC play. Never would have thought I'd see that from Devo. Just figured out where he needed to step his game up. So Arkansas has figured some things out. I don't know that I would say that this is an Elite 8 team, not without Nick Smith Jr. Matthew Turner, I know we keep asking, but any news? Oh, I just read that. Cody L. James says, speaking of buying players, you hear that Jim Boeheim start throwing all those other teams under the bus. Did Crawford need surgery or just rehab? I don't believe I heard anything about surgery. To me, it looked like an ankle sprain, and maybe it was like more 50-50 if he'd come back in, but I think it's just a rehab deal, just a sprain. It just looked like a pretty typical roll-up from behind. Don't quit on White. Today's commitments mean nothing, says Danny Hively. Commitments never meant anything, really. I always bring this up because, like, anytime somebody decommits, somebody said there's always the guy that says commitments, they don't mean what they used to, to which I always respond, did you marry your 8th grade girlfriend? You were committed to her at one point. So did commitment ever really mean anything? Anthony Jackson says he hears me. Appreciate that. Sounds like they need Ozarks go. Absolutely, Evan Baker. Gil McGarity says, do you think the Hogs will still play Notre Dame in 2025, or will that change since Oklahoma and Texas coming in could change our non-conference schedule? It's a good question, Gil. One that I had not thought about, but the non-conference schedule is almost certainly going to 9 games when Texas, and it sounds more and more now like it will be 2025, which nobody thought. Everybody thought they'd end up coming over early, but it does sound like it's going to end up being 2025 before that happens. And with the idea that you move to 9 conference games, I would hope that you would still play a tough non-conference opponent every year. I don't want to see them play 3 teams that they should easily beat. 3 teams that they pay to come play a one-off game in Fayetteville. I'm hoping that everybody continues to play one Power 5 or Power 5 type team like Notre Dame, BYU. One of those teams every year continues. I hope. And then just 2, easier games. I would like to just see maybe one easy game as a warm-up game. Like your first game of the season, you play an easy opponent, and then let's get it on after that. Cody L. James says, what's your too early prediction for the baseball season? We're going to have Andrew Ellis come on next week after things kind of get gearing up for the college baseball showcase, and he'll talk to us more. You don't want to hear any of my thoughts on baseball. I'm not good at it. I'm not passionate about it. I mean, yeah, I follow the Hogs, but I would argue probably that everybody watching this video right now knows more about Razorback baseball than I do. I stick to football, commenting on basketball. That's my niche. Niche. Jonathan Parker says, I think with all the transfers this year is because the coaches weren't able to hold camps during COVID years. Most of them are going to smaller schools. That's a good point, Jonathan Parker. And Sam Pittman spoke about that a little bit, just how difficult it was to evaluate prospects, especially that first year, the 2020 class. I mean, they're looking off film. They're not getting the guys in camp. Now, having said that, when you get guys into camp stuff, you still mess up. One of the things that always annoyed me a little bit about Brett Bielema, who I always like Brett, but, I mean, my best friend annoys me too, But one of the things that always annoyed me about him is he would get so bent out of shape over recruiting rankings and how much he would trust his guys over, guys at Rivals or 24/7 Sports, and like what makes them qualified and all this kind of stuff. But the truth of the matter is, when you bring in a recruiting class, half of those guys are not going to pan out. You're going to miss on half of them. I mean, that's just the way it works. So for you to trash recruiting rankings because they're not 100% accurate, when you have probably more resources, you think you're more qualified, and you still miss on half the class or more, I mean, that's a bad look. And I'll say this too, like when guys go to the NFL, they get all the high school tape, all the college tape. They have, psychologists, medical examiners, everything that they could possibly want to evaluate a prospect. And they're still going to draft Jamarcus Russell. They're still going to draft Ryan Leaf. They're still going to make colossal errors all the time. They're still going to draft Tom Brady in the 6th round or whenever it was. I mean, football it's a hard thing to evaluate. Now, the odds that you are ranked a 5-star prospect and you go to the NFL are very high versus if you're a 2-star. Now, 2-stars make it to the NFL draft. It happens. A lot of times, if you go to those profile pictures of guys who are 2-star recruits, there is no profile picture. There's very little information. Maybe they didn't go to camps or anything, or maybe they hit a big growth spurt afterwards. Things like that, things that you just can't measure. If guys aren't going to camps and stuff, it's kind of hard to evaluate them. So a lot of times that's where a 2-star comes from. But the odds of you being a 5-star and going to the NFL are dramatically higher than if you're a 4-star, which are dramatically higher than if you're a 3-star and onto a 2-star. That always bugged me a little bit that Brett would take every national signing day and just start slamming recruiting services. And it started because he had a class at Wisconsin that was ranked 51st. Again, I like Brett, personally. I find myself rooting on Illinois. Dustin Hoofman says, agree or disagree? New coaches have done a good job recruiting, replaced 2 coordinators, and we still have big names committing to the Hogs. I like the guys that they've added in. Out of all of them, I like Travis Williams a lot, but the new guys, I was really impressed with Marcus Woodson. And if you look at what Marcus Woodson did, by the way, we got to get some more questions in or this is going to be a short show because I got like one more. If you look at the guys, like if you look at what Florida State did in 2019, the year before he arrived there, they were 13th in the ACC in pass yards given up. Last year, not only were they number one, did I say SEC? ACC. Not only were they number one in the ACC in pass yards given up, it's like 165 yards a game. They were fourth nationally. So they go from one of the worst pass defenses in the country to the time he got there. His title there, by the way, is defensive backs coach and passing game coordinator for the defense. That's a pretty dramatic turnaround. He's also known as a hell of a recruiter. Some Florida State fans are a little upset with him because of the way the Travis Hunter thing went. Okay, he was the lead guy for Travis Hunter. They had him all the way until National Signing Day, and he flipped Jackson State with Deion Sanders. Now he's going to Colorado. But that was, kind of one thing that Florida State fans were a little upset with him about. But, I mean, look what he did on the field. And we're talking about fans on message boards and stuff, and these are usually your most diehard, the guys that know everything about the inner workings of football. But in this day and age also, and when I say that, I mean like message boards, like people who are like on 24/7 and stuff. My experience anyway, nothing against, free message boards or anything. That's just what I generally look at, the pay message boards. So I think Arkansas is getting a hell of a recruiter with him and a guy with a really proven track record who also has some really good familiarity with Travis Williams from their time at Auburn. He's the guy that really jumps out to me personally. Darren Wilson, I think, is really intriguing too. I thought he really handled himself well up there. I did not know that he was being pursued by two other SEC schools. LSU was one of them. I don't think Pittman named the other one, but I like the defensive coordinator staff right now. And really there's an opportunity. If you look at it, you're a defensive coach, and you look at Arkansas, what they did last year, I would think, hey, it basically, Arkansas's defense may have been the worst in the SEC. It was definitely the worst pass defense in the entire country. Dead last. 131st out of 131. There's an opportunity to say, as one of those guys, look what we did to this secondary. They got some work to do. It's not going to be easy. But, yeah, I think they hired some recruiters. Anthony Jackson says, do you think Ford or Dunning will transfer after this season? I used to always never talk about transfers. But in this day, it is something that you have to talk about. Back before the transfer portal happened, I think it was like 40% of your roster in basketball was going to transfer. I think it's higher now. There are two players that are on this team who were on the team last year, Devo and Kamani. So do I think Ford or Dunning will transfer after this season? I certainly hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but yeah, I do. I don't know that they're planning on transferring or thinking about it. I just know that they're not playing. Do I think eventually they could be good players for the Hogs if they stuck around? Sure, I do. In this day, nobody really sticks around, though. They just don't. I would hope they stick around, but yeah, my gut. You're asking for my gut opinion. It's that they'll transfer. Just kind of the way things are. Matthew Turner says, as the roster stands today, who do you see as our starting lineup with football? Wondering which of the new guys end up starting. That's a good question. It's a lot of question. So, offensive line, Bo Limmer at center, left guard, Brady Latham, two returning starters from last year. I like Takias Crawford at guard, so I'm going to slide Takias Crawford in at right guard. I will go at right tackle. That's a tough one. You know what? Even though I like Takias Crawford at right guard, it's still about getting your best five on the field. So I may put Joshua Braun at right guard, even though I don't know a whole lot about him. I'm just kind of, basing off of things I've heard. I'm going to go Joshua Braun at right guard, and I'll go with Takias Crawford at right tackle. And then I've got a battle with Devon Manuel and Andrew Chamblee at left tackle. Tight end. Tyrus Washington, I think, will be your tight end. I just think, Nathan Bax is the older guy, but when you talk about, a guy that's, been in college for a while, so brings some experience, played in 5 games last year, still was able to maintain his red shirt because of the rule with the bowl game, you being able to play a 5th game in the bowl game. I just think, experience with playmaking ability, when you combine those two things, that's Tyrus Washington. I think the other guys, Luke Haz and Shamar Easter, will play. Easter not enrolled early, but I think those guys will play. I also think those guys can split out a little bit. At wide receiver, I'm going to go with the transfers. I would be interested to see if Isaiah Satania makes a really big jump from last year to this year. He had some health issues last year also. But I would go with Isaac Teslaw, Andrew Armstrong, and Tyrone Broden. I think I'll go with those 3. With some serious push with Bryce Stevens and Isaiah Satania. And, hey, don't count out Sam Bakke. Don't count out Jaden Wilson. Those guys have a lot of potential also. So that's for wide receiver. For offense, that's it. Obviously, Rocket Standards is going to start at running back. And you got AJ and Rashad DeBinion behind him. Defensive line, I will go with Cam Ball, Tarian Carter at defensive tackle. No, you know what? Cam Ball, Eric Gregory at defensive tackle. We'll see on Tarian Carter how well he comes back from the ACL. But I do think Eric Gregory moves inside. Defensive end, Zach Williams, Trajan Jeffcoat. We'll go with those 2 guys. Maybe John Morgan pushes there too. Linebacker, Chris Paul, Antonio Greer. I'll go with those 2 guys. I really like Manny Powell, Jordan Crook as some younger linebackers that could push. And I would think they also add a transfer linebacker in addition to Greer. Secondary, we'll go with – this is all top of my head, so if I miss somebody, I don't think I'm missing anybody, but if I do. Quincy McAdoo at one corner, Dwight McGlothern at the other corner. They said Lorando Johnson's a corner, but they're still going to get their best 3 guys out there, and I think that maybe he ends up as a nickel. I'll go Al Walcott at one safety spot, and the other safety, Hudson Clark, I guess. Cam Little, kicker, punter. It's slipping my name, but the Australian kid, Max Fletcher. That should not slip my name because my neighbor used to be named, or still named, but it was my old neighbor was Max Fletcher also. All right. What else we got here? Dustin Hoofman says, what are your thoughts about how our O-line and D-line stack up to SEC standards? O-line, I think, stacks up well. I think the D-line will too. It's just a matter of, do you have the depth on the interior? How well does Taurean Carter come back? When you talk about, how things could look, Taurean Carter coming back, Cam Ball, I think absolutely is right there, SEC caliber too. So those 2 guys, and then you have Eric Gregory. I think he'll move inside, 6'4", 303 already, listed as an end last year, but they'll play more 4-man front this year. Who am I leaving out? I feel like I'm leaving one guy I meant to talk about out. Cam Ball, Taurean Carter, Eric Gregory. They need at least one more defensive lineman out of the transfer portal. I know that. Nico Davier, I think, is another guy that has a lot of potential. I think he'll end up being inside. I think the end spot is in good shape. and I think they're okay on the defensive line. I don't know if I would say, like, SEC standards, what do you mean by that? Like, do you mean, like, the 10th best defensive line in the SEC could still be better than any of the defensive lines in the Sun Belt, But I wouldn't say, like, I don't feel like this is like an upper tier SEC defensive line right now. I don't think it's 10th either. Aaron Anderson says, do you think Singleton will be the next starting quarterback after KJ? I think it'll probably be Jacoby Criswell. I think they really upped the backup quarterback position and the position overall. Quarterback in 2023 is better than it was in 2022. Just for the simple fact that you got KJ back for a third year as a starting quarterback. You've replaced Malik Hornsby, who's off to Texas State, with Jacoby Criswell, who I think is a much better passer, who also brings some, pretty dynamic legs to the table also. Cade Fortin is also back, and you've added Malachi Singleton to the table. Hopefully you get Cade Renfro back from another torn ACL, because I think he's a guy with some potential too. So I think they'll be much better at quarterback, but right now, and Singleton's got a whole year before we start thinking about this, but right now you've got, I think Jacoby Criswell will be your next guy. I'd like to see Singleton live this spring. And the reason I say that is because we go into one season after another where multiple teams end up starting the wrong quarterback based on a full competition that they had in camp. TCU quarterback is a good example. Lost a starting job in camp to Chandler Morris. Morris got hurt. He comes in and is a Heisman finalist. We've seen that happen at Arkansas. We see it happen all the time. And even with KJ Jefferson, his first year as a starter, Sam Pittman was like, we didn't know he was that good a runner because you never saw anybody hit him in practice. So the reason I say Singleton and maybe even Jacoby Criswell that you'd like to see them live is because you're not necessarily relying on them to be a starter. And this is an opportunity to really get a good idea of what you have at quarterback. And by live, I don't mean like tackle to the ground, all that kind of stuff. I mean, really like thud them up, lock them up, keep them on their feet, but hit them. Don't just tag off of them. That's what I would like to see. And one reason you also don't know, like, how does a guy react when a 270-pound defensive end puts him on the ground, You just don't know that. They sit back in the pocket. They know nobody's going to hit them. So there's a lot of peace of mind that comes with that for a quarterback. And then you throw them into a game and they get popped. The Mike Tyson quote. I don't have to say it. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Jonathan Parker says, haven't noticed before, but Devo was talking with the SC fans. I noticed that during the game on Saturday. Does that happen more often than not? It looked like both were having fun with it. Yeah, I thought they were having fun with it, but there was a couple of guys. One of them was in a jersey that looked like they were definitely yapping at Devo, and he yapped back. I mean, Devo's a fun player to watch. He's unnerving sometimes because I think he sees the world differently in a lot of ways and maybe sees the basketball court differently. And he does some things that you're like, wow, that was amazing. And then he'll do something else. You're like, Devo, what are you thinking, bro? I mean, you guys remember when he shoved that dude into the bench last year? He got tossed out of the game. But then he does stuff like that pass he did where he's coming down the lane and he dribbles it backwards through his legs and then goes back and then flips it over. I can't even remember who he flipped it over to, maybe Jalen Graham, which was just a spectacular play. I think the rest of the team also is starting to wake up to Devo a little bit in terms of, like, always be ready for one of his passes because he's going to throw a bullet no look at any moment. And I feel like they're waking up to that a little bit. The biggest difference with Devo to me has been his three-point shooting. I mean, you tell me you can't spend some time in the gym and work on it. The guy was shooting 18% for a long time there, and then SEC play starts up. He's working at it, and then suddenly, he's 40% in SEC play. I think he's like 20 of 50. Zach Hoggard says, are we looking at any big-time D-line transfer portal that we know of? I don't that I know of. I wouldn't say that I know of, but again, there's another transfer portal window coming up, and they can take guys out of it. They can take commit. I saw a guy in the transfer portal committed today to somebody, so they can take guys just because the window opens up the 1st to the 15th. That doesn't mean anything. That's just when you can enter the portal. They can still add guys who are sitting in the portal right now. I don't know why you would necessarily wait to enter the portal if you weren't planning on, signing early, I guess, unless you were at Georgia or something like that, because they had a lot of guys enter after the national championship game. I would, as Rick Schaefer says, take every single player that's transferring out of Georgia, every one of them. Cody L. James says, just a few more here. I got the best jumper in the chat. No question, just letting y'all know. I got the best jumper in the chat. Not sure what you mean. It's over my head. Kevin Frost says, do you think the new transfer rules will help Arkansas football? Absolutely, they have the potential if you just take care of it right. NIL, as much as we're frustrated with NIL, transfer portal, the timing of everything, the calendar, it can absolutely help a program like Arkansas that doesn't have as big a backyard as some of these other schools. No question about it. Chris Bennett says, any update on Nick Smith Jr.? No update is the answer. No update. All right, everybody. Different show. I wanted to get some questions today because a lot of times, I'll have Danny on, we'll talk recruiting stuff, and that's great. But a lot of times lately it feels like we have missed questions from people. So I wanted to make sure that we got some questions in. You probably can't tell from my energy level. I don't know, maybe you can. I've been feeling a little under the weather lately. So not 100% energy-wise today, but we'll get it back. We're going to have Andrew Ellis come on the show next week just to talk a little bit more about baseball since, as I stated, I can't really help you much there. We want to make sure we cover baseball. And you can read all of Andrew Ellis' stuff on HawgSports.com. Follow him at Andrew Ellis247 on Twitter also. But we'll have him next week. Of course, we'll get to some questions, hopefully, from you guys. And, it's an interesting few days with basketball. I mean, the next time we'll talk, Arkansas will have already played Kentucky and Mississippi State, I think is the next game, 5 o'clock on Saturday. So next time we talk, we'll have a couple of basketball games to talk about. The whole landscape of where Arkansas is as a basketball program could shift a little bit in that amount of time. So hopefully it'll be good news. Hopefully it'll be a good shift. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.